Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and this is PRT. With me tonight is Anthony and Tony. Two different people.
What's up? What's up?
No, we're the same person.
People always confuse you. Well, that's the first time I've ever heard you go along with it. Usually y'all like, I'm Anthony, I'm Tony.
Tony is just a projection of me, and I one of him.
You can't talk at the same time, though. You're going to ruin the illusion.
So we had, because we were at the Lone Star Paracon.
Yeah.
And people kept getting y'all mixed up backwards, you know. It's like,
Yeah, that's why I just say Mushu. It's so much
Mushu, yeah. And so, anyways, we're here tonight. Now, obviously, this is going to be a different night than we were used to. I'm pretty sure we're going to drop this Thursday, right? On a Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay. So it might be Thursday night where you're at. But here's the thing: we got to get this started. But before we do, I want to remind you guys that we have a lot of work that we do on YouTube. Now, a lot of you people just go and listen to us on the podcast, and that's great. We have a big audience on all those platforms. There's over a dozen of them. I think there's 15 or something like that, different platforms all together. And I know a bunch of them are just a podcast. So if you want to get our material, because people on the podcast episodes are always asking for more, because you get one show a week. Well, we do more. And then they'll be like, well, you didn't do a show. Yeah, we did. It was on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, that's where you're going to find the bulk of our work. I think we got like over 300 podcast episodes, but there's like 350.
The thing is, too, like those are usually like 3 hours. So that's like...
Yeah, you're getting 3 hours of material.
It's
now,
so
sometimes
much more.
You know, about an hour of it is, you know, talking about different stuff and
us messing around,
laughing and joking and stuff like that. You get a lot of like laughter and stuff like that. That just comes with it. But yeah, definitely you should check it out. I mean, sometimes we'll do like this little after hours thing. After the first 2 hours, we'll just go into, you know, kind of
answering questions, kind of
answering
stuff like
questions, and people will laugh because we do a little bit of comedy and whatever. It's not really intentional. Like at first, we just kind of started out doing it, and it just kept happening. So we're just like, you know,
yeah, it's kind of evolved organically.
Because you'll get some jokey stuff on here, but you know, not a lot on here. So you know, you got an hour, so we do what we got to do. But it's a good thing. Go check it out, man. You're missing out if you're not on YouTube. And we're now on TikTok, and I'm fixing to be doing what is that? That's definitely a Southern thing. I'm fixing to be doing.
Fixing to.
You want to?
Yeah.
I'm fixing to get done.
Yeah, because I used to talk that Southern, you know, until like I said on the live stream the other night, you know, on YouTube, that I stopped talking like that. I had to learn when I moved to Austin. It's like, they're like, you talk funny. You talk like a hillbilly. Except that's how I was talking. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to change it so I can sound more like, you know, more cosmopolitan, I guess. So anyways, yeah, I just, and no offense to anybody, because most of my family on both sides talk like that. So I just like asked my dad one time why he sounded different. He said, if you're going to be around people, you know, that are going to do business and people that, you know, you want them to take you seriously, go get a job. You know, you can't just be walking in there going, hey, hi, what's over here, how, you know. That's what he said, you know, and because he doesn't talk like that. Y'all met him. He doesn't sound like that at all, but everybody else in the family does.
Yeah.
My dad, though, he's not the farmer rancher. You know, when I was a kid, we lived out in the sticks, and then we moved, and that was it. And he went to work as an electrician and for years and years at power plants and stuff like that, and then eventually retired. But so that being said, that's why I talk the way I do. But there's a Patreon that can help with the show. It's $10, $20, $30, $40, $50 tier. $50 tier, you get loaded up with all kinds of stuff. And, of course, through all the tiers, you'll get a crate after 2 months. And after 6 months, you get another one. And then it's like every 6 months, just tell us, hey, it's time for my new stuff. And you'll get the new swag, the merch. And we also do a Patreon show. We haven't been able to do one lately because we're doing the Monday call-in show, and that's been really good. A lot of people have really enjoyed that. Last Monday we had people like what, dozen people on there, maybe 7 people got to tell their story.
Yeah.
some people got left in the queue because they showed up late, but we'll just tell people, hey, come back next week and we'll get you in earlier, and so it continues,
Mm-hmm.
people talking about witches and shadow people and just everything you can imagine, dude. People coming up with Luchusa, vampire story. Yeah, we got a vampire story. I mean, it's just nuts, man. People coming in there just telling their stories because we did that and opened it up because we didn't know what else to do. We had too many stories and we couldn't get to everybody. So I'm like, we just need to open up and let people come on and just let them talk and say what they got to say. Because it was just so much. We have so much of it. And but also I think that speaks to the truth of what we've been saying, that we're backed up. There's too many people trying to, I don't want to say too many because they're not too many. It's just there's a lot of people that have something to say. And so much easier, instead of me trying to retell everybody's encounter, to just have them do it. But anyways, that's what's going on, folks. Check all that out. Do what you got to do. If you're on the YouTube, you can join as a member. That gets your name in green. It's $5, and then you end up entering into the giveaway that we do 3 times a week, giving away a ton of merch. We got the new store coming out in just a couple weeks, and it'll be really cool. You'll be able to order stuff again like you used to, but there's certain things on the giveaways that you won't be able to get. They're exclusives. And some of them are Patreon exclusives, like the new tumblers that are coming out. Those are going to be given to the Patreon members.
Yep.
Those
black
are going
and
to be
gold, or
black and copper. Yeah. And then the Patreon makes decisions like the new colors, like the new color shirt, the black and gold shirts.
Mm-hmm.
So those will be coming out too. What else we got? Just a lot of different stuff in the works, man.
Yeah.
Writing books, hopefully coming down the home stretch of this vampire thing. Here's what's happening. Like the vampire stories come and then I go in another direction. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking maybe I should go back. I don't know. Because there's so many different things I want to say, but there's only so much time and room that I have to say it. And I don't have time to just tell every bitty thing I have about it. So if you're interested in the vampire thing or the werewolves, you need to pay attention to the live streams because that's where a lot of that information is being disseminated. So anyway, let's get to tonight's show. Tonight's episode and what we're talking about tonight is a mimic. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't even know any other way. I mean, just Victoria, the woman that sent me this story, she lives in, it's a small town in Arkansas, which is basically a suburb of Little Rock, I guess you could say. But she, man, I don't know what I would do. So she sends us this story, and I was going through, and the heading was just mimic. And I've gotten those before where people talk about this. But this thing did some things it was enough material to fill up a couple chapters of a book. When she was 11 years old, she had this imaginary friend. And looking back on it, she didn't realize that it was imaginary. I think that she was actually corresponding or talking to something that was real. This wasn't the product of a child's mind. And I'll tell you, when she was a child, she was diagnosed, I think wrongfully, with ADHD, but I think she had a anxiety disorder that just went on. And they said that she would get in these weird mood swings. And so they took her to the doctor. And of course, she's a little bit older than me. So they had all these different diagnoses that they went through over the years and said that she was wrong, or that they found out that they were wrong. Got her on different types of medication. She's 3 years older than me. Or maybe 4. Yeah. So she's 4 years older than me. So she ends up with these different diagnoses and multiple personality disorder at one point. And she was telling me all this stuff. But in the end, what I think it is, I'll save my opinion till the end of this and I'll tell you. I don't think it was any of those things. So this thing first came into her life when she was 11 years old, and they had gone to this lake And I think it was called like, it was something had to do with cherry something. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the lake, but it was, the word cherry was in there. I don't know. It was some kind of resort or something on the edge of the Ozarks. And this was, years ago. I don't even know if it's what it is. There was a little camping ground. And I think she said it's like private land now, but at the time it was like Cherry Oaks or something like that. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'm sorry, I can't remember. And I did try to get back in touch with her, and I forgot to ask that question. There were so many other things I wanted to discuss with her because, like I said, we could probably continue this on the live stream because there's so much of it. But I'll get to the basis of it. What she went through when she was a child, remember we talked about how there can be attachments to even animals and attachments to even, okay, so there was this dog that was in the water, and it was in the middle of the lake. And this is really sad. Somebody had lost their dog or left their dog in the middle of the lake. I mean, it was in the middle of the lake, and it was on the verge of like not being able to make it. And so her dad rowed his boat out there, and rescued the dog. And the dog was so weak it could barely, like, it was on its last legs. And so they took it back to their camp, and they, gave it food and water. And the poor thing just laid there and slept for like hours. Like she said, it was like 11, 12 hours. It didn't move. This was when she was 10. Now, she said that the dog would play, and it was just a normal dog, and they named him Scooby. He was a cool dog. They had no problems with the dog. But it would sleep for like half of the day. And it would just play, and then all of a sudden it would just fall over like something was wrong with it. And so they found out that the dog was having seizures, and they didn't realize it. She said, we were country people. We didn't know, this dog was having problems. So they took it to the vet, and the vet says, yeah, this dog has some issues, and it had a weak heart. Well, when she started to spend more and more time in her own world, like kind of in her own head, because the kids at school would make fun of her, she had a stuttering problem, and so she spent a large amount of time with this dog. And she really thinks that this dog was sent to her, like it was almost like a divine thing. Like, she's like, I always wanted a dog. She's like, and my sister had a dog, but I was so high strung that my parents didn't think I could take care of one. And so she's like, me and my younger brother, we love this dog, but the dog really took to me and not so much my brother. And so Vicky said that it became her dog, and so her brother got a dog too. And then those dogs became inseparable. So the other dog they named Bo. So it was Scooby and Bo. And Scooby was black with white. He was like a lab mix. And Bo was a German Shepherd, and they became fast friends. And they just, when they got Scooby, they said he was about 2 years old. So he wasn't very old. But like I said, he had a heart condition, and he would get freaked out, and he would have seizures. He would lay on the ground and have a seizure, but they weren't real long. But as he got older, they were more pronounced. And she said that she would sit up at night with him when he would be feeling bad, and she would pray with him. And she said the dog was almost like a human, like he could sense things. And then she said that something horrible happened. When she was 11 years old, he got hit by a car, but he lived, but his back legs were messed up. And so for about another year or so, he was learning how to walk again and all this. And so they kept him out in the garage, and it was just one of those things where they didn't have like the kind of help that we had these days. So eventually the dad went to her and said, look, we have to do something with him. We can't, he can't live like this. His quality of life isn't good, whatever. And so she had another year with him or so, and she said, it was like the best 2 years of her life, like with this dog as a child, because she had no one else. And she said that this feeling came over her that of like hopelessness, and that she would rather like just she go than the dog. She's just like, she said when they were trying to take him to go to the vet, she laid on top of this dog. She said this is a true story. She laid on top of him. She got her little brother and her older sister to go in there with her. and they laid down with the dog, and they prayed. And they prayed over the dog all night. They just kept, every couple of hours, they would pray. And she said by morning, she said this was in early summer. It was like the first week of summer. And she said the morning came and he was standing up. He wasn't dragging his legs anymore. He wasn't whimpering. He was standing up and he was able to move. And the dad comes in there and says, okay, kids, we got to do this, get away from him. And they stood in front of him. They're like, no, you're not taking Scooby, whatever. Well, what ends up happening, the dog actually makes a full recovery. And with a broken hip, broken right hip, that healed improperly, he was able to live. And so I'm going to tell you this before we go any further. When I was a kid, I had a little dog named Pumpkin, and Pumpkin was pregnant. And she had gotten pregnant by a much larger dog who was, roaming around our neighborhood when we lived out in the country. I say neighborhood, but he was like, half a mile down, away from us. But his dog, General was his name, he got her pregnant, and he was a big old hound dog. And she was a little Beagle Spitz mix. She was tiny. And she got so big from the puppies that they had told us that she was probably going to die if she had them. So that night, before we were going to take her to the vet and have them taken, my dad had made the decision, to get them taken out before they killed her, because it was one of those things where they couldn't guarantee that they would be okay. You know what I mean? So I sat up all night praying with her, and this happened to me. The next day, my dad finally went out there about 3 or 4 in the morning, told me to go to bed, get out of the garage. And we come back in the morning and she's not in the garage. She had gotten out. I still don't know how she did, but she was on the side of the house and she had given birth to 3 puppies, all healthy.
Oh, wow.
And one of them I kept and was mine until he was attacked by a pit bull.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, long story short, and then, a couple others ended up going to other people. But the puppies lived, and so I saw that, and she was fine. She made it. She was good. And she was such a sweet and loyal dog. That was one of the most loyal dogs I ever had. And I can count my most loyal dogs on one hand. I've had a lot of dogs I loved and cared about and were close to, but those ones that I could count on one hand, the ones that were just the super loyal, she was one of them. And so I told her, I said, I understand, like, animals become like, they're like a part of your family,
Mm-hmm.
But something weird started to happen when she was 11 years old. She started to see like this weird sort of grayish black mist that would kind of hang in the house. And it started after they got Scooby. And she said that when they came back from that trip at the lake, she said that sometimes she would see this mist or something kind of hanging around over him. And so when he would go into his seizures, one time she told her sister that she thought that she saw what looked like a hand or something coming from the mist holding the dog down. And so the sister, kind of jokingly, not thinking that it would amount to anything, told her, well, you need to tell it, get off of him and come to me.
Oh,
and so she did.
Challenge accepted.
And so all of a sudden, Scooby, he stops having these seizures and he becomes normal. And now, whatever it was plaguing him, maybe, I don't know, maybe it started going after her. Because, and the reason I believe this is probably the case, when she said that, I believe her, because she said that she was picking out some clothes for school one day, and she said it was back to school, second or third day. She was excited. She had all these new school clothes, and I mean, not a lot of them, but she said she was excited. The only time they ever got new clothes was at back to school, and then maybe a little bit at Christmas. They were lower middle class. She's like, we weren't rich, we weren't poor, we definitely weren't wealthy. And she said that I was like going through my outfits, and she said she heard a small voice say, "Pick the pink one." And she turned around, she looked, she didn't see anything, but she saw Scooby in the corner growling at something, that may or may not have, she didn't know. And she said that she looked around the room, and so she did. She took the pink outfit. And then there was this girl at school, and she says, I'll never forget her. Her name was Eleanor, and she would attack her. And they called her Ella. And she said that this girl was mean. She was always like, picking on me, making fun of me. So the first thing she did was push me down, and I fell into some dirt, and got my dress all dirty. And she's like, she turned around and looked at her friends and went to laugh. And then she said something shoved her down, and she fell and busted her chin open, and that she got sent to the principal's office. But the kids all came in one at a time and said she didn't do it. It wasn't her. Something pushed this girl, but it wasn't her. And so she kept on like this. This went on and on. Like her brother one time took one of her dolls, and Barbie doll, ran down the hallway, tore its head off. He trips and falls and busts one of his teeth, chips his teeth. She's like, to this day, he's got a chipped incisor from doing that. And she said that it was weird. Like this stuff would happen. One day her mom was yelling at her, and some Tupperware flew and hit her in the head. And the mom was downstairs and didn't know. Like, she's like, I didn't do it. My mom was in the kitchen. I was upstairs. And she said that sometimes she would hear her mother's voice. And then she would go downstairs, and her mom would sound very angry with her. She would go downstairs. She wouldn't see anything, and then she'd hear laughter. So then she was just like, what, like, what's going on? And she's like, I felt like I was losing my mind. So I started telling my parents all these things. So that's when she started going to a child psychologist. And the next thing you know, she's getting, because the teachers at school said she was talking to an imaginary friend. And I asked her, I said, what did this, when it first revealed itself, she was 12 years old. And I said, what did it look like? And she goes, it started out, it looked like a little man, like a little brown-skinned man with like his hair looked like it was slicked back, but it was in little tufts on either side. And she's like, it's kind of funny. She goes, and I don't know why. She goes, but his hair kind of looked like Wolverine's. You know how Wolverine has the hair? And she said, but like a child-looking Wolverine, and she was like, I was looking at it, and I was thinking, this is weird. Like, it looks like, she's like, she goes, and it wasn't until later on when I really paid attention and I saw Wolverine, like in a comic book that my brother had and his friends. And I thought, that looks kind of like the guy, except he had like brown skin. And she said that he could stick his tongue out like a long ways, and he would hop around, and then sometimes he would crawl up on the walls and stuff. And he could do all these tricks, and she could see him, but nobody else could. And she had some friends over one time. She didn't have very many friends, and then they stuck her in this school, like a special school or whatever, because she was having all these problems, and their uncle or her great uncle helped pay for it because they didn't have the money. And so her great aunt and uncle were very kind to her, and they doted on her. They loved her. And so they put her in this school, a private school, basically. And she began to have, like, she had learning disability. It was really bad. And it wasn't there before. So they did all these things. They did a brain scan, like all this stuff. When she got a little bit older, she had gotten checked, as a teenager, because she started having these fainting spells and these seizures when she was trying to play volleyball. And she said that it wasn't turning anything up. And this imaginary friend, by the time she was 14, her mom and dad were like, look, this imaginary friend thing has gone on long enough. So she had these two girls come over from when she changed schools, and they came over, and they didn't realize, this is when she was like 13, that they didn't know anything about her. Like, in her old school, she got to start over. She wasn't the picked on kid anymore. But she told them, she's like, I have a friend, and he's not imaginary, And so she had a name for him too, and his name was Crush, right? And I'll tell you about how she came to that particular whatever. So Crush had this weird fixation on her, right? Like he had this, like anybody that messed with her, he would do something to them. And she could talk to him, but sometimes when he would speak, it just sounded like gibberish. Now, we've talked about this before, these little brown, like duende entities. Some people call them brownies. This could be what this is. I don't know. But they would speak in like this gibberish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Something we can't understand. It's real fast, So she said that was very much like it. And I described to her what my mother had seen and what I saw when I was real little. My mom would see these little people, and they would speak real fast, at that house we lived in Copeland. And I think that that's what they were. Those were like, it's kind of like fae, but different. And so she said that they were, they were at the pond again or whatever, the lake that they went to, or I'm sorry, not the pond, the lake that they went to. And the dog that she was with, he refused to ever get back in the water. I mean, I think that's just because of the whatever. She goes, but right before my eyes, she's like, sometimes this being, she thinks he was just invisible. And he tossed the dog into the water, and the dog came running back out of the water and started to chase after something that she couldn't see. And it was the only time her parents and her siblings got a glimpse of this thing. And guess what it looked like? That blurry looking camouflage type thing that people say Bigfoot and Dogman look like. It was like that, that blurry looking, pixelated weird. And so we went down this whole rabbit hole, me and her, and she started talking about the Matrix and things that maybe what it could be, and we just went down the whole, and she's really worried. She's like me. She's kind of worried about the future with AI, and what, and so I told her, I said, these things, even things that we create ourselves with our own minds or whatever, they're really still there. It's just that we've discovered them. It's like electricity. We didn't invent it. We just discovered it. And so whenever we come across stuff, people oftentimes, they think that it's something that we are discovering, but it's like, or they think it's something we create, but it's something we're discovering. It's already there within this wavelengths of the Matrix.
Right.
That, you know what I'm saying? Does that you follow?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So what she was saying though, like this little thing started to talk English to her, but it didn't speak. And for the first 2 years, it was like it was learning how to communicate. And before it was kind of like rambunctious, and it would throw things. And sometimes she would just wake up feeling like she was full of energy, and then she would just crash out, and then she would have these weird seizures and all this stuff. And of course, it's contributed to this entity, But it was like it was learning with her. It was starting to communicate with her, and it started to tell her about where it came from, what it was, like it was literally like, according to this being, what it told her when she was like 14 years old. And this happened after the sleepover. Now, what happened at the sleepover? Crush decided to make an appearance because they kept making fun of her, saying, "Oh, you don't have an imaginary friend. If it's imaginary, you don't have a real friend. It's imaginary. If it's not imaginary, make it do something." So finally, she said, I wasn't at the point where I was playing with toys. They were all put away in the closet. I didn't play with them anymore. She's like, but it started throwing my old toys out of the closet. It was flinging them out of the closet. And she's like, and I couldn't see him, but my friends freaked out, got up, screamed. They ran out. They had some pizza there. They knocked it over. They just made a big mess. Everybody was screaming. They wanted to go home. So she started yelling at him. Well, that was the first time he ever spoke directly to her. Like that she, it answered her, let's put it that way. Like she had heard sometimes a sentence gibberish. Or two. Yeah. Or the gibberish, right? Or like the time when she said that there was a long period from the time when she said that it said, pick the pink one, when she was first getting this, what I think is an attachment, to the time where it actually started to communicate with her for real. Like it would talk, but not much. So this thing described itself to her. And what it said was that its world was not like our world, and that it had been something else, but it was crushed and turned into a ball of energy. And then it was reborn, and it doesn't remember how or why or what, but that another entity that it called Ian, that's what this thing said, okay, told her. This is what it told her. Told him that they were the same kind of entity, but that someone had hurt it, and destroyed its consciousness and turned it into basically like Play-Doh, like a ball of clay. We've talked about this. So then this entity, it's kind of like it's hatched, like it comes back to life through some sort of disturbance or whatever, and then all it knows is that it just is. And it doesn't have any memory other than when it basically began to follow a dog around in the woods. That's all he knew. But it said that they had a friend that was bouncing around in the woods with them, and they looked like balls of light. This is what the thing told her, right? Up to this point, she had no interest in ghosts or monsters or anything. But one of the forms that this thing could take was of this wolf-like creature. Now, do you remember when that lady that I interviewed, I just kind of on the fly interviewed that lady from the hotel, and she was talking about the two wolves that were her friends?
Yeah.
This is something we've heard before, guys, where somebody will say that they have a wolf-like pet or something, you know what I mean? But this thing, she said that it changed into a wolf, but she had pictured it in her head, and then the next thing you know, it's become this thing. And she said for about 3 or 4 months, she don't remember any interaction with it. She just remembers going out to feed her dogs and them barking and barking and barking, and her seeing this black wolf-like entity with yellowish red eyes staring at her over the fence, and she immediately got this image of it in her head of it holding her and telling her, it's okay, it's me. It's Crush. And the reason that it was called Crush was because somebody or something more powerful had crushed it into this ball of light, and where he was kind of like imprisoned, but he has no memory. He just remembers like falling out of it, and then next thing you know, he's following a dog around, then he just hitches a ride, and then it goes out into the middle of the water. What made the dog do that? He says he don't know. But he had a friend that was with him. Like you said, he called him Eon or something, or Ian. I think I was saying it wrong. I think it's Eon or Ian. But anyways, she was telling me this, and she said that I have no recollection of certain memories. Like my family said I was sleepwalking on a regular basis. She goes, I have no recollection of it at all. And she's like, the scary thing was that we had a little above ground pool, and my parents found me swimming around in the water, just almost drowning, and then eventually they pulled her out, and she was just like, they were like, what the heck are you doing out here? And they, back then they didn't know, hey, don't wake up somebody who's sleepwalking, or there was none of that. Like nobody knows, like, oh, you could startle them, whatever. So they pulled her out, and she just remembers being cold and wet and just feeling like she was going to die. And she thinks that it was this entity that had done this. Now, by the time she was 17, she was still seeing this thing, and she had a boyfriend. And it was her first boyfriend. She said that they started going out when she was almost 17. First boyfriend she had. And she said, she's like, she goes, I think I was pretty. I'd look back at my picture, I had a very low self-esteem, but she's like, as I got older, I got a lot of attention, from guys. And she said that, this one guy was really nice to her, really sweet, and they started going out, and they went out to this place. It was kind of like a local lover's lane, and she sees this person standing in the woods, and it's waving at her, and she said that it looked like her aunt. So she gets out of the car. She's like, oh, that's my aunt. Let me go talk to her. So she goes out there to talk to her aunt. I think she said her name was like Barbara or something. She goes out there to talk to her, and she's like, Aunt Barb, what are you doing? And as soon as she got close to it, like the aunt turned and ran into the woods, and then she began to follow. Then she gets up to this tree, and she stops, and she feels like she should not go any further. And there she sees this wolf-like entity, the black furred, weird yellow-eyed thing, and it's growling at her, and it begins to chase her. So then she runs back to her boyfriend's car. And this kind of stuff, happened. I can't even give you all the instances of she told me about. But these are the most notable. And one of them, another one, she said that she was like, she took a cooking class in school, and one of her assignments was to go home and make a cherry pie. She could make a pie, and she chose cherries, so she was making it. And she's like, and this thing just exploded in the oven. And she's like, how the heck did this happen? And she hears this like laughter, and then her mom comes in there, and, and she runs out of the kitchen because the laughter scares her. Mom comes into the kitchen, and there's like this red feeling like all over the kitchen, like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's even on the ceiling. And she's like, Mom, that's not what happened. It was just in the oven. And then, when the mom goes away, she hears this laughter or whatever. And then she had this weird thing that kept happening. She kept seeing her sister walk down the hallway, and she would be carrying something of hers. So one day she gets really pissed off because her sister keeps going in there and grabbing stuff and walking out. So she gets mad, and her sister get into a little bit of a tussle, and her sister's screaming like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have anything of yours. And then when they go into the parents, they mediate, they go into the sister's bedroom. Well, there's this stockpile of little different things that were missing.
Jeez.
And the sister was like, I didn't do that. I did not put that there. That was not there earlier. So and she said this had been going on for a couple of weeks, like just really bad. And if the other sister is to be believed, which she believes her now, years later, then where did the stuff go? Where was it? You hear these cases where these entities will take things and you don't know where it goes.
Yeah.
And so she began to communicate with this thing. Get this. Okay. So one of her friends tells her, hey, she's 18 at this point. They said, let's have a party. They're about to graduate. She's like, let's play with a Ouija board. And she says, well, who do we contact? She says, ask Crush some questions. She's like, it's a spirit that lives in my house. She didn't know it was an attachment on her. They'd always lived in the same house. So she thought it was just something that was in that house. And it was just like, it was such a trickster. She didn't really know. So they began to talk to this entity and they're like, hey, Crush, show yourself. Nothing happens. And they all have a big laugh about it. And then as the laughter dies down, they hear something still laughing. And they all stop and they're like, then they freak out and all run in different directions. And one of her friends like runs towards her bed and falls, trips, and lands and hits her head on her nightstand, has to go to the freaking hospital. So it became a freaking nightmare because she ends up with like a, cerebral hematoma on her head. And so she's like, my friend could have died. So she's like, at this point, she's angry. And she tells this entity, she's like, Crush, why are you constantly doing these things? And the answer to her was because I like it. Like it answered her, like on the Ouija board. And then she said, well, why don't you show yourself? And that she had only one of her friends there at this point. The other friend was was downstairs doing something she shouldn't have been doing with her brother, which was imbibing of the devil's lettuce. But I mean, teenagers are teenagers, right? She said, and I asked her this question. I said, were you inebriated at this point in time? She goes, oh, yeah, we were. She admitted it. She's like, we were drunk. We were stoned. And I said, man, well, it always kills credibility when somebody tells you that. But I mean, she had already had all these things happen and she wasn't stoned. She wasn't drunk. So you can say, hey, yeah, that one time she goes, look, I was, but I know damn well what happened. I mean, I know what I saw.
Plus, at least they have half an excuse for using a Ouija board.
Yeah, I mean, because she continued to use it. That was the thing, and it got worse.
There's no excuse. Never mind.
No. This was. It got worse. Like this was. So she used it over and over again, and this thing would communicate with her readily through the Ouija board, and then something else happened. Remember how it said it had like a friend? Well, when it started talking, she said, "Are you there, Crush?" It says no. Then she says, "Who are you?" It said friend. And she's like, friend of me? And it said no. Then she said, okay, friend of who? And it said Crush. And then it said, who are you? And it said Ian, but it was spelled E-O-N, like E-O-N, like Eon,
yeah.
Ian. But the way that Crush said it was like Ian. But she asked Crush, like, is he safe? Is he friendly? And Crush says, safe to me. So in other words, he's basically telling you that entity is not really, that's the way that's what I gathered from it. Because she said, it said safe to me. It's saying, well, yeah, it's safe to me, but probably could hurt you.
Well, take it easy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And it was kind of like just left her hanging in limbo. I said, well, did he make any effort to try to tell you what to do? Because this entity was now there at your house. And she's like, no, not really. And she goes, and now, the mimicking part got worse. Like, I don't know which one of these entities was doing it. I know there was two, because I saw my mom and my dad come in one night from Christmas shopping. She goes, and I was like 18 years old, and I was just dumbfounded. Because as I'm watching them go up the stairs, they pull up in the car. And she's like, and I'm looking, and then as I see them get to the top of the stairs, she goes, this is creepy. She said, the one time I really got a good look at these things, I see these two gray, floppy-eared, goblin-nosed-looking creatures, and they took off running in different directions. And she's like, and I was terrified to go up there. She's like, and they didn't look like what Crush looked like, the little brown dude with the weird hair. So gets worse. This gets worse, folks. Okay, bear with me. But she started messing with the Ouija board on the kitchen table. She's like playing with it, and she said she asked, she looked for Crush, and she said, "Was that you and your friend playing a trick?" And he said, "No." And she said, "Well, what is that was going up the stairs?" And it told her, it said intruder. And then she asked the entity again, this Crush guy, who sometimes would talk, sometimes wouldn't. And she said, what are they doing here? And it said portal opened. So she said at this point, she thinks that playing with the Ouija board, and then she said how, and it said you. And then I think that the Ouija board was the connection. So then she started, she kept on seeing this like black, shadowy looking thing that sometime had a form that looked like a werewolf type thing, whatever. And she would see it. And when she got to the point where she knew when that thing was out in the backyard, because her house was butted up against some woods or whatever. And she said that when she would see that, she thought that was her friend, well, not really a friend, the attachment that was with her was out roaming around being whatever the heck that was. But then she started having the mimic problem really bad whenever this Ian character apparently showed up. And she tried talking to that entity and asked that entity if it was the main culprit. Like she's like, "Are you responsible for this, this, and that?" The entity says, "No." She says, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And it says, "You, portal." And then she says, "Are you friends? Are you friend of Crush?" And it says, "No." But it said, "You say friend," right? She asked this thing, she's like, "You said you were friend or whatever." And it said, "No." So she started to wonder if this was the same entity that she was actually dealing with. And that's when I told her, I said, that is the fundamental problem with these things. You don't know what you're talking to. You don't know who you're talking to, and you don't know what they're capable of, and you don't know. And all these things have like their own like modus operandi. You don't know what their agenda is. And she started to realize that there definitely were multiple entities because she would see them, and there was just one that looked like a green. The way she described it was like, have you ever seen the movie Gremlins? And it would like come out from underneath the wall, but it was almost like a cartoon, like it would squeeze itself out. And she said, I would have thought I was just absolutely insane that I needed to be in a nut house. She's like, but me and my brother both saw it. She's like, we were sitting there watching, of all things, the Ghostbusters cartoon. My little brother, he's my age. But she said, my little brother and me were watching this Ghostbusters cartoon. And she said, we see this entity like crawl out from it, just pop up and like, bloop, and there it is. And then it just runs and it goes through the glass. What they didn't understand was like why it needed to crawl out from underneath the wall if it could just run through solid. But if you think about it, glass is not as solid as, other material. So maybe that is not, it's not as solid. So at this point, her and her brother had started playing with the Ouija board. The older sister had started going to church and was like, had this, and it was during that whole satanic panic,
Yeah.
And so they were like telling people, do not play with Ouija boards, stop all this crap. And her sister was going to like this Pentecost. And so she told them, you need to stop messing with the Ouija board. And so the mother agreed. And so they took the Ouija board in the backyard and they burned it. Once they burned it, like the activity got really bad. And I told her, I said, see, you guys opened a portal, but you didn't close it. And I said, that's the problem. She goes, well, how do you do it? I said, I don't know. I don't open portals and I don't close them. The only thing you can do is go to Christ. Oh, man.
That wasn't you?
No.
So we're sitting here in the studio.
It sounded like it came from behind me.
I thought someone just kicked the desk. Like,
yeah, and we just heard bang, bang. Like, that's crazy. We heard it all the time, though.
Yeah.
But that's nuts. Anyways, that was not us, if you heard that. So anyways, they opened this portal. They can't close it. And the only way you can is through Christ. And that's what I told her. I said, if you have to, whatever. So eventually she was 25 years old. She gets married. She finds this guy. She's married. The first boyfriend eventually ran away in terror because he saw Crush. But he looks very much like she said, he just looked older. Like he was brown. He had the weird looking hair, and he had this weird little nose that had gotten more elongated and kind of hooked downward. And his lips were like always back in like a snarl. So he looked menacing. But she didn't believe that he would hurt her. And I said, well, yeah, you're a source of energy until you're used up. And so that's my opinion. But then she said that this thing basically like started showing up in like photographs and things. Like she would take a picture of her first two children, and this thing was right there below them. And so this psychic told her to burn the pictures. They were Polaroids. So she did. And then this thing got angry and started showing up like when she would be most vulnerable, like in the bathroom. She's using the bathroom or taking a shower, and he would just appear. It would like just kind of floating like mist. She would see it, and it would start to try to talk to her. And she said that this thing had basically gotten bigger. Like he was growing like she did. She was growing. It was growing. And she said that the main thing that really scared her was like it would change shape. And like her dog would always be growling, barking, and chasing this thing all over the place. And she said it was just a nonstop thing. And then, of course, he passed away. Scooby, he passed, he wasn't that old when she got him. But like she said, he was already like, he had all them health issues and stuff. So he only lived like 9 years. I mean, that's not like a long, long time.
Yeah.
But she thinks that dog would have lived a lot longer if he hadn't been through so much. And eventually his heart gave out. But I told her, you got to have him for 7 years. So he was 9 years old when he passed. So she was fortunate in that way. She was like 18 when he passed away. But I told her, I said, there was something weird about that. And now, I don't want to get ahead of myself. When she started having issues with him, this entity showing up, it would mimic her children and their voices. And then she would go in there, and one of the children was just absolutely terrified, and it was terrorizing her children, and she asked it to stop. I don't know if this is really, I've really debated this one here because I've heard other people say this, but a pet will pass away or something will happen and they'll see it again. Like I had a dream one time that I was petting Ivan,
I have a story like that.
Yeah, and so does Anthony with Bowser.
Yep.
And so it's like they visit you, right? Well, she said that Scooby started coming back and visiting her, and she would in the dreams, they were dreams, right? He would sleep at the foot of her bed, and when this entity would try to come floating in through the wall or out of the closet, Scooby would stand up on his hind legs, kind of like a man, and would chase him out of the room. Until one day, this being that she described, the ones that she called Crush, came floating through like an orb, right? And then unfurled itself like a 2-dimensional cartoon and then kind of popped out into our reality. This is what I think, my words. It's not her words. But that's what she described to me. And it looked like that black wolf with the eyes, and it attacked what she thought was the spirit of her dog. But she got the courage in that dream to lunge at this thing and grabbed it. And when she grabbed it, she had it kind of like behind the neck. And she's like, it smelled just like a wet dog. She's like, I smelled it. She goes, I could smell blood, urine, and like this odor, this nasty, dirty dog odor. And she said she was choking it, and she kept screaming, in the name of Jesus, I rebuke you. In the name of Jesus, I rebuke you. And she said the more it struggled, the more she held on, and she was choking it. And she said that it began to like dissipate, like it got smaller and smaller and weaker. And her dog was down there on the floor and was like biting on one of its legs and was pulling it in another direction. So it couldn't get any balance. And then the thing just kind of shriveled up into like a gray ball and tried to float away. But then she said it was a dream for sure, because she floated out of the room, out of the bedroom, and like kind of swam towards it and caught this gray ball. And then she pulled it back into the room. And then she said she just wakes up. And then there was nothing. She said for like 2 months, there was nothing. I didn't have any more weird dreams. I didn't dream of Scooby. She goes, but then she goes, I had this vision like in my head. And she goes, I don't think I really saw it. It was like a vision. She's like, and I was taking a bath. She goes, I usually just take a shower, but I decided to run a hot bath. So I was really stressed out. And at that time, her job wasn't going so well. And she was having some problems. She was getting ready to change jobs. She didn't even know at the time. And she said she's laying there and she's like, and I'm starting to fall backwards into the tub and I'm almost about to fall asleep. And then something licks my face. She goes, and I sit up real quick and I look and I see Scooby's tail wag and him go out of the room. She's like, now at the time I had a little dog named Dixie. And she's like, she was a little bitty dog. I forgot what kind of dog she said. Oh, it was a Yorkie. She said it was a little Yorkie and it was always barking, running around. And she could sometimes see like the image of her dog, like running around with it, her other dog, the one that had passed away. And she's like, I even saw my brother's dog, Bo, who I just was kind of like my dog too. And she's like, and I thought I saw them all playing with Dixie and my cat Goober. That's a funny name for a cat. But anyway, she said they were all playing and Dixie and Goober, and they were all playing together. And she's like, and I look and I'm like, am I seeing this? She's like, and I'm not dreaming, you know? So she had this kind of like a vision of Scooby coming to the back door and scratching and dropping this gray ball on the ground. And like I said, you know, it had been a couple months. There was nothing going on. So she goes outside and get this. She opens the back door. She goes, and I was so freaked out. She's like, I just threw a towel on my head and put my robe on and just walked to the back door. She's like, and I see there on the ground, there's this gray lump that looks like Play-Doh or clay. She's like, and I pick it up and there's something hard underneath it. She's like, and so I go into the kitchen and I wash off the gray like clay, which became kind of like mud. And it had the consistency more of mud at that point, you know, because I told her if it was clay, I don't think it would just come off that easy. But she said that it was like this hard white ball, like underneath it. And she was like, what is it? She goes, it was like an egg, but it was round. And so she said for years, she just had that sitting on her shelf, just sitting there. And but the activity stopped. Nothing has happened. And she said that she had become very devout in her faith and she'd been praying and she had been trying to tie bind and rebuke these things, which is good. She already knew how to do that. And she also talked about the Ouija boards, you know, having asked God in her heart, you know, and she said, when I told her what I would have done, she's like, well, I didn't know to do that until later. You know, she did. She figured it out. And so she said that sometimes, though, her parents would report weird, like paranormal activity. She doesn't think it was the same entities, but that there was a portal open. So she went over there with a couple people from her church, and they believed that they got rid of it, but that every now and then her parents would feel something or see something, you know, residual, I think. But that ball, right? So she asked me about it, and I said, do you still have it? She goes, no, my son took it home with him, and he thought it was so cool. He just kept it. He's got it there. And I told her, I said, you need to tell him. This is what I'm going to tell anybody. He needs to get rid of it. But he needs to put it somewhere where people can't get to it, like go throw it in a lake or something. And I say that, and maybe
dog was in the lake.
Well, I would say maybe I was going to say maybe the ocean, you know. Yeah. Because of the salt water. Now, I have my reasons for that, and it's going to sound totally weird if I tell you all kinds of weird stuff right now. You might think I'm crazy, but trust me when I say that the consciousness of these beings can absolutely be destroyed. It can be reconstituted as something else. I know it's going to sound very Pokemon-ish, but that's the truth. Where do you think they got the idea from it? Even if they didn't base it on that, that's probably where it came from. Because a lot of ideas come from just the ether out of nowhere, right? Mm-hmm. And they're probably sent to us. Just like we talked about Geiger, you know, the German that
designed the xenomorph.
Yeah, the xenomorph. Where do you think he got it from? From nightmares.
Yep.
Because those are real creatures. I mean, they don't look exactly like that. That's his take on them. Because a lot of times what something looks like to you is not what it looks like to me. You know? Like you can take two different people and they could look at Tony and one of them sees an attractive, handsome guy, and then the other one sees an ugly little duende. You know what I mean?
Oh, so the other one
No,
sees
I
an
don't know what
attractive,
you mean.
handsome guy, and the other one just sees Tony.
I don't know what you mean. That seems confusing.
Tony's like, I don't follow.
I'm gonna need a demonstration here.
But yeah, so you see my point, though, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's what I told Vicky that she should do, or Victoria. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of poetic that he got crushed again, basically like compressed when that's what happened to him in the first place. Like he was compressed into this one being and kind of assumed his new identity. But then now it's like the cycle's repeated, you know?
Yeah, and you know, we've talked about this. I've read this. I'm not a follower of
Kabbalah,
this.
right?
The Kabbalah,
Doesn't it?
yeah. In the Kabbalah, it talks about demons being like these compressed beings.
Yeah, from another universe.
From another universe. They were kind of, they're fragmented and they get compressed. And who knows if the fragments, like if our universe were to just implode,
and
you
he
might
said like
get.
the Eon was like a part of him at one point, right?
I don't know.
No, he didn't say that. He just said he was his friend.
No, I said a friend, but I don't know. Maybe they were apart. Maybe they were. I don't know.
I was gonna say like maybe that's what these Fae are. Is like
Yeah.
after okay, I'm not gonna say exactly like but let's say a demon gets compressed into a little ball, and when that ball comes out and becomes something, that thing has no allegiance to anything like the demon would. So then it just. But what happens if that thing doesn't get like compressed again and it starts living for 1,000 years? Wouldn't it like become its own little thing? And maybe that's where the Fae come from. And like that's why they act more like tricksters and stuff, because they don't really have, an objective like a demon or something else.
I think they just want energy.
They're the little tricksters. Like they want energy, but like it's not for the same reason as a demon would, because as in like a demon is definitely evil. These things, especially with Crush, he just says like, yeah, I like doing bad, but it's not like he has to.
Yeah, he never hurt her.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And in the Arabs, they talk about, and this predates Islam, but they talk about the jinn, and there's good, neutral, and bad. I don't know, man. I mean, I remember reading some book one time, and I can't even tell you the name of it. I've read so many dang books, million books. But there was one about this. It was a ghost book. It was a book about ghosts, but I'm trying to recall it off the top of my head. And it was this entity that would sign its signature was like this little heart with like a devil tail or something on the mirror. Mm-hmm. And I remember them saying that every Christmas during December, this thing would give them a reprieve from being a piece of crap and would leave. And nothing would ever happen during December. I mean, I don't even remember what that is. If anybody in the audience knows or can just email me and tell me if you can remember that. Because I can't remember the name of that book, man. But I read it. It was about a haunting. Like I said, I've probably read 2,000 books about hauntings.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you which story is which, if it's not something that was given directly to me. That's not a story that was given to me, folks. That was a story that I read. So, and I've read so many, and I've gone over so many cases. But this is pretty interesting, though, this story here, and shout out to her son-in-law, who, is the one that hooked her up to come and check. That's what's so good about the paratroopers, is that they themselves don't have the story. They'll get somebody that'll give us one, and so she didn't know who we were, but now she's a listener to the show. So Victoria, thank you. Welcome aboard for, whatever. But yeah, I didn't just leave her hanging, though. I told her my thoughts and what I knew about it and what if I was her, what I would do. I mean, because I've had people talk to me about these balls of light and then them seeing like these round egg-like balls that they find, I saw a video about it the other day. Somebody had one like on Instagram, and I didn't even think to, but it was just this like ball. And this lady found it out in the woods, and it wasn't an egg because it was really hard. And I was like, yeah, you shouldn't mess with that, because the last thing you want is some consciousness. But supposedly, and this is, there's different types of people out in the world, and they believe different ways. And some people believe that those things can be reconstituted as a non-negative entity or a neutral entity. But the thing is, you don't know.
I mean, I think it's like it depends on what it was beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you know, the reason why Crush liked doing bad things is probably because beforehand he was something bad. So, like, even though he doesn't need to do that anymore, he still likes to do it because he used to.
Just nature.
It's his nature. It became part of his nature. It's not like something where it's his objective, but it's just it became like a part of his nature. So, like, if you have more neutral beings that, like, get, you know, who knows what they might become or who knows how they
Well,
would
I mean,
act.
energy is not destroyed.
No.
It's just displaced.
It's
and
just remade.
and it reconstitutes itself or whatever. So this could just be like a ball of energy that has no consciousness, but it gets one once it's reanimated. And who knows the mechanism to make it reanimated? Like, I don't know. I've read a lot of books about a lot of different types of things. And here again, you know, we were talking about earlier in the show, we were talking about how people think that they discover or that they create something like the golem.
Yeah. But they just discover what's already there.
Yeah, but it's already there.
Mhm.
Like that golem is already there. You're just putting in you know, energy into it. Like the pictures that we talked about from St. George's Keep.
Mm-hmm.
There's a golem, you know, that's there that had been remade. It was kind of like Frankenstein, because people think that Frankenstein's monster, Mary Shelley, right? She sat on her mother's grave and cried and wrote the book and all this stuff. And she supposedly had no knowledge of these golems or whatever. But think about it. Like, she didn't have to. The universe or whatever had the memory, and that wavelength found her through whatever channels, maybe demonic or otherwise.
Collective consciousness.
The collective consciousness. It doesn't have to be demonic, but it gave her that image and that thought. So Frankenstein's monster really is a golem. And these little creatures that come out of these balls, you know, they're basically like golem Pokemon, you know?
When was Frankenstein's monster written?
That's a good question. I don't even know.
I mean,
you finally found something I don't know.
I'm just wondering if, like, during that time they had any understanding of, like, neural pathways.
The 30s, maybe. Somebody look it up real quick.
Because I find it interesting that, like, they use lightning to wake up the monster,
mm-hmm.
and that's like, oh, now we know, like, everything is energy and everything in our head is basically electrical.
Yeah,
it's like a whole electrical network. So I wonder if that was known at the time or not, or if it was something they made up.
Well, you know what the concept of those white balls remind me of? It sounds like those are just like empty vessels that are just waiting to be infused with a consciousness. But that sounds really similar to the physical process of creating life, doesn't it?
No one knows what you're talking about. No,
he's
I mean,
still fuming about you saying that he pretty much is that little ugly, whatever.
Oh, okay.
He's still mad about
that. His
that.
hair's kind of similar.
You're just jealous.
I mean, like, at the moment it is. It's not usually like that, but I think it's a convenient synchronicity.
Well, they can't see my hair.
Well,
yeah, lucky you.
They can see your hair every live stream. I mean, they can see it.
But no, the point is, like, as in the spirit, as in the flesh.
It's an egg, kind of.
That white empty vessel is like the kind of the spiritual counterpart to, like, a human egg, and then the consciousness that it's with
fertilizes
which it's being imbued, fertilizes it.
Maybe those things are actually just tulpas. Like the actual.
It could be AI though. I mean, this is gonna sound really out there, but I mean, I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. I don't care. I mean, AI could be behind a lot of this. I mean, it really could, because like I said, we don't invent anything really. We just discover it. So AI is already there. We discover it, but it could be creating things and doing things, and it could be laying things out there, and it could all just be cyclical, you know, and these things, their consciousness dies, you know, and the energy becomes something else. So even if you were killed because, like, say you went to the afterlife, you know, your consciousness can be destroyed, because Jesus says to fear the one who can give you the second death. That's God, right? So if your consciousness is destroyed, you cease to be as a person, but that energy is still there. It just becomes something else. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even that's even the concept of reincarnation too. When you think about it, like, you know, you're no longer that being that you were before.
Mm-hmm.
The consciousness, though, some of it survives in you, like little strands of it, but really and truly, you're not that person anymore. And then, of course, the Bible, Jesus says, it's for a man to be born once, but, whatever. But that could be interpreted a lot of different ways.
Oh, yeah.
You could be, as me, Josh Turner only lives once, and then that's it. You're no longer, I thought it was interesting, too, that she believed that her dog, I say that she believed because I don't know what I believe, but she believed that her dog helped her, from the other side. And she hasn't seen him since, which is kind of sad, but
Well, I mean, I think the
dog did his job.
Yeah, I think he was saying, like, this is goodbye. Like, here's the pearl.
Yeah.
You let it get away. Here
But
it is.
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is that's pretty. Anyways, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure and like and subscribe and join us. What else do we got? The group. We got the Facebook page.
I just want to say one thing. What if it wasn't the same? What if it wasn't Crush, but what if it was the friend that the dog brought? Like that's why he was gone.
Well, if she hasn't seen Crush since that happened,
had anything
then it was
happen to
probably
either one of them.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, what if the dog went after the friend? Because she said that she got a ball and she went after it and brought it back to the room. So it's weird that the dog was gone for a while, then came back with the same ball. Because then I thought what happened to that ball that she had when she brought it back and like passed out?
Well, that was because she was dreaming. She was asleep.
Yeah, but like
that would have been in
the physical. Ethereal. I mean, in the ethereal, still in the physical.
But I mean, that wouldn't have been. Would have not necessarily translated to physical. Here's weird though, that what you just said, because she's like a physical being who grabbed it ethereally, or I guess how do you say it? I don't know.
Astrally.
Astral, yeah. But then the dog is a spiritual creature now that brought it back physically.
But brought it back
through a vision. It's weird, right?
Brought it back to
I never even thought of that until we just now we're kind of brainstorming about that.
I like to think that maybe the dog went after the friend, and that's like just to cut out all weeds.
Yeah, but I wasn't told that, so I can't say that that's what she.
Well, we don't even know what that marble is. If it's.
Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea, but I don't know.
Unless both of them got compressed into that same marble, and that cycle just kind of continues where multiple beings get just crushed into one. And
well, I mean, it wasn't multiple beings because it was like Crush and definitely a friend, and like she attacked Crush. Like she definitely choked on the Crush, which she described as a black wolf.
Yeah, wolf-like.
Yeah, wolf-like
creature on two legs, but it's real, which is like a dogman, basically. I mean, that's what it sounds like. And that's how the whole conversation got started. She's like a mimicking dogman, basically. It said the mimic, and then the first thing it was, I think I encountered a mimicking dogman. That's how she worded it. The thing that gets me, though, too, I mean, like if you have so many different types of entities, energies, whatever, it's hard to categorize them, but there are these attachments that will come in pairs, like twins, and they'll be attached to someone. And people will remove one, and they don't realize that there's another one there because I think that they're born in broods, like in groups. I mean, but that's for another time. We could talk about this all night, dude. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of PRT. Check us out. We're on Monday nights where we open up the. I don't want to say open lines because they don't call in. You can actually jump on, take the link. Jump on the show, get in the queue, and join the show and tell your story. I mean, and these people, I interact with them, we talk, and every Monday night on YouTube at around 7:30, 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Tuesday, we do the podcast episode, of course, and this week it's Thursday, but and then on Wednesday night, we retell people's encounters. Thursday, we're off typically. Friday night, we have a guest on every Friday night, somebody who's in the field typically doing the research, somebody who's in our field. And what I mean by that is ghosts, cryptids, alien abduction, whatever. And they come on and they talk and we interview them and blah, blah, blah. I think this week is James Bartley. If this is Thursday, you're listening to this, it'll be tomorrow night. It'll be James Bartley, a reptoids researcher from Australia. And talks about dogman, reptilians, everything cool. in between whatever stuff that people like to hear. And then Saturday we're off, and then Sunday is our flagship show. That's the big show. We always get, a lot of people that can show up for that. And that's when we retell people's encounters too. So Wednesday and Sunday are basically the same thing. And check out last night's episode. If you listen to this on Thursday, obviously last night we talked about Goatman and this family that went through absolute hell from this, which may have been more than one entity there too. It was like these Goatman or Goatmen type creatures that were terrorizing a family up in Maryland. Go figure, And it was by the, what's it called? The Patasko Valley State.
It was a weird name.
Yeah. And it was only 30 minutes. It was right outside of Baltimore, and it was like 30 minutes from Bowie, which is, Maryland, where the Goatman origins sort of come from. And then, of course, we have the Goatman here in Texas, and we're going to tell that story too. There's one in the Alton Bridge where we've been there, and we saw a blue orb floating in the water. We never could explain it, but a lot of unexplainable things in this world, folks. A lot of weird, wild stuff. Check us out on TikTok and the many other platforms that we're on. Like I said, join us on YouTube. If you're getting the podcast, you're only getting one episode a week. Man, I'm sorry. That's how it goes. But there's a ton of other material out there, tons of it. A lot of stuff. We do work. I'm constantly working. Even when I was literally doing my job the other night, my other job, I got some stories from a lady who just came out of the hotel as a bartender. And so anyways, folks, thank you and good night.